pre and postnatal specialist. What does that involve? What does your day-to-day look like? Tell me a little bit about that.
So a pre and postnatal exercise specialist, what we really do is we try and bridge the gap between rehabilitation and mainstream training again. What that kind of means, I suppose, is helping our clients understand what their body needs, understand where their body is at, and help them meet their body where it is at, which is much harder to do than you would think, because post-pregnancy you're so disconnected from your body and you're kind of in a new body. It just feels so different, and I don't think I really even understood how different it would feel until I experienced it after my first pregnancy.
And what was the kind of struggles that you had then that you've experienced that you kind of use now in your coaching program?
Loads, to be honest, and that was how Empowered Mama kind of came around. So I had my first baby 6 years ago. Pre and postnatal coaching didn't really exist in Ireland back then. So it was really trying to kind of sift through all of the grey on the internet and find the black and white answers, which don't really exist.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is there like a black
a formula?
and white? No,
not really, and it is really down to every individual. So that was the struggles that I faced as a personal trainer, as an ex-competitive Olympic weightlifter, someone who'd been training for years, loved training, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to rehabilitate my body. I went back to training way too quickly, doing like not crazy exercises, but things that I just had no right to be doing at that point. And I ended up giving myself a pelvic floor injury, which is an absolute nightmare. So it put a pin in training completely for a while until we kind of figured out what was going on. Financially, it cost a fortune in women's health physiotherapy to actually rehabilitate it and come back from it. And still to this day, it's something that I have to consider in my own training because of that mistake that I made postnatally in my first pregnancy. Do
you find that it's a mistake that a lot of your clients face, or is it more so like women who, you know, are very, very into their training, very experienced trainers? But
both. We're all like postnatally so vulnerable, especially to pelvic floor injuries. And people who are untrained and think I'm going to get my body back and all this, I'm going back into it, they're really susceptible to it because they're untrained. Any of the kind of musculature and fascia surrounding their pelvic floor isn't strong, so there's no kind of scaffolding there to help support it. So they have that. Then from a highly trained person point of view, they're in that mentality of like they don't listen to their body. They're constantly pushing. They've untrained themselves to listen to their body. They're trying to, you know, push on and maybe kind of like I did, try and resume their training where they left off, you know, pre-pregnancy or even pre-delivery, and it's too much.
I'd imagine that's a difficult thing to go through from being I was able to do X, Y, and Z to I have to scale this back. And
to nothing,
to
like breathing,
you
know, for a while. From like a identity point of view, like unbelievably hard, because you're dealing with the whole kind of transition into motherhood as it is, you know, the push and pull of matrescence, the loss of identity, your schedule is just like blown to shreds, you know, with this new little thing that's completely dependent on you. You're sleep deprived. It wasn't the case for me, but a lot of people might have like postnatal depression or postnatal anxiety, so the mental health aspect of that. And then to take away the one thing that you love, that makes you feel like you, that makes you feel connected to your friends and to people in your community is gone. It's really, really tough. It's where I honestly wouldn't want any of my clients or friends to end up, and that was why I was like, I need to go back and retrain, figure out how to rehab my own body was why I initially did it, because the information wasn't here. But also, I was seeing an amazing physiotherapist at the time, but even back then, 6 years ago, the whole concept of CrossFit and all was still a bit like, just don't do that. You know, it was like, well, it's kind of what I like doing. So
I'm at a crossroads here.
So, and that's the one thing that like irks me so much in the whole postnatal thing. We're always telling women what they can't do. You can't do that. Oh, be careful doing that. Don't do that. let's teach people what they can do,
Yeah.
and make it fun and make it suitably challenging, and that's what I love to do.
Well, so are you kind of, is your job kind of in the role of, you know, that fine line between, you know, being cautious and being sensible with their program, but not being over cautious to the fact that and tell them that they basically can't do anything?
Yes, and there were a couple of pre and postnatal trainers in Ireland kind of around when I started doing it, and I kind of irked them a little bit because I was kind of pushing the boundary. I was like, you know, this just isn't enough for me. That's not the type of client that I want to work with. I want to work with people who, you know, want to like progress and push on, and not necessarily, and who aren't like afraid. I'm not afraid. That woman's body isn't broken. My body wasn't broken. It just needed something different. And it's up to us as coaches to help people. It's exactly like a regular client. You know, you're pushing them, okay, that's your edge there, that's as far as we can go, but let's work on that and progress, and then push them on and push them on.
So would that mean like you even saying that would be like a lot of mums who have been in the gym for years and love training, like that's going to be music to their ears, that they want a coach like that who's, you know.
And they can, like, they deserve to have a coach like that. They like it, this topic. What was the 60,000 babies are born every year in Ireland? So there's 60,000 women out there every year. I don't know how the percentage of them that trains, but I'm assuming in today's, you know, it's probably quite a lot.
Hopefully a lot.
Probably is quite a lot. So we owe it to them to show them how to do it.
And then, like, that's big numbers, and I assume there's probably not that many like coaches to clientele in terms of your demographic.
I think there's a lot of people who think they're coaches for the demographic. And
so is this the problem even with the industry, is that it's not regulated, and that like to coach pre and postnatal, like do you have to meet certain standards, or is it kind of like the majority of the industry, or it's just like, yeah, I could be a coach of anything, as if I put it in my bio, basically.
100%. There's zero regulation, and people are always so shocked to hear that.
Do you would notice it more than most people, because most people are, like, they're not specialists in it, so they're just gonna like take people's word for it and stuff like that. So I presume you see it more often than most.
Yeah, I'd hear about it often in hindsight.
Yeah.
Someone comes, they have a birth injury or pelvic floor injury, and they're like, oh, my trainer had me doing X, Y, and Z, and it's like, oh, probably just you weren't ready for that at that time.
Red flags going off in your head.
A few red flags,
straight away.
Yeah, maybe just tell your friends not to go to that person for a while. But the thing is, like, that person could be an amazing trainer.
Yeah.
It's not. They just don't have the experience, and they might even have the qualification, but I think the experience and the hands-on with women on the gym floor is so important. You know, because it's really visual. You need to see like how their core is working. You need to like talk to them like at different ranges, like how's that feeling? Can we push? Okay, we're going to stop there. We regress back a little bit. You know, it's a lot of that, and it's also a lot of working and liaising with physiotherapists, which I do a huge amount of, and that would be a lot of what I kind of do in my day-to-day as well. Just physios referring clients onto me, working with the physio, because obviously I can't do an internal on a woman down in the gym floor, so I'm depending on the physio to say, look, this is going on with her, we'll start a program, see how it goes, she'll go back to her physio, that's improving, amazing, let's keep doing that. Or it might be a little bit much for her at the moment, let's just pull it back a little bit. So it is a lot of like push and pull and give and take, and adapting. So
that's kind of the training aspect of it. What about even the mindset aspect of it? I was going to touch on even like, I'm sure you get a lot of clients who come to you and they're like, oh, when am I going to get my, you know, body back the way it was, and so on and so forth. Do you have to work with clients with a lot of kind of that mindset stuff around you have a new body now?
Managing expectations.
Yeah.
It's a funny one. So, and it's one that I feel a little bit ambivalent about, because mainstream media is going to be really pushing that kind of bounce back post-pregnancy, the celebrities, all of that kind of stuff, which is obviously really damaging. But then there's like a big pushback as well on social media that I see, and it's like, you know, accept your body where it's at, you know, your body's done so much for you, look at your beautiful children, and it's just like guilt. It's like, why don't we just kind of take all that away and find a middle ground, because a lot of people are like, Emma, I don't like how I feel in my body.
Yeah.
I miss how my body, you know, was. And I'm not going to be like, oh, it did so much for you though.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
Oh, thanks for the help, fella.
Yeah. It's like, okay, let's make a plan and start working you back towards that in a way that you're going to feel really good. That's not like putting you into a huge calorie deficit, giving you punishing workouts while you're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
You know, probably at the end of your tether as it is, and just finding that kind of middle ground to work on, again, in a suitably challenging way. But I think the social media and media in general just has so much to answer for from a like guilt perspective on mums, because you can't do right for doing wrong. Do you know, and it is like, can we just let everybody decide how they want to approach their training, how they want their body to feel, and if they're not happy with that, it's okay for them to want to change that too.
Yeah, you're allowed to want to see progress in any form.
Absolutely, you're allowed to want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Do you know, even if you're a mom.
Yeah.
Newsflash, like it's
because
okay.
it is almost at some spectrums of the internet, it is almost a bad word to even suggest that people want to lose weight.
I get a lot of women coming into my in-person classes, and we'd always do like a little intro at the start, because we were really big on trying to like build community and build mom friendships, because mums really need mums. But it's so funny, like it's not funny, it's just something that
comical.
Happens is that they'll be going around and it's like, I just really want to get stronger, and then someone will be like, oh, I just kind of want to lose a bit of weight. Oh, sorry. And I'm like, please don't apologise. Like, it's okay. Do you know, like it's, you don't need to say sorry or feel guilt. You're here, and I don't really care while you're here. I just want you to have a good time and feel good about your body, and hopefully make some mum friends as well.
What about clients who obviously do want to lose weight, or want to have that kind of body that they had pre-pregnancy, and have them kind of unrealistic expectations about how long it's going to take? Do you have to deal with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And it is just managing the expectations and being realistic. And also, you probably see it as well, do you know, when you give someone their calories and they're like, I could never eat that amount of calories, like that's way too many. And you're like, just let's give it a try and see how it goes. Like, and you know, it's a real kind of eye-opener, I think, for people when they do, if they're going the kind of tracking macro route. But they don't have the time either to train the way that they used to train. It just doesn't work.
Well, that's a big mindset shift that they need to make as well.
Huge mindset shift, and also their energy levels aren't the same. They're, you know, a lot of the time extremely sleep deprived, like just worn out.
So would you say your job more so is stopping people from ruining themselves when they're trying to kind of go back early and end up overtraining and realising why they can't do it? And
and one of the hardest demographics for me to work with is CrossFitters and people who have like competed. Yeah. Because they come back and they're like, you know, I used to deadlift whatever, and I'm like, yeah, it's amazing, but I actually don't care. Like, this is what we're doing today.
Yeah, it's very, it has to humble them, kind of.
Yeah, and you do kind of have to like be a little bit like that sometimes, you know, and it's not like, it is exactly what you said, like having to just kind of humble them a little bit and just say, look, let's meet your body where it's at. Your body's really different to what it was even a few months ago. I will get you back there. We will get there, but just not today, and maybe not next week or the following week, but we will just work slowly back. I'll tell them a bit of my history, like about my, you know, I was a competitive athlete. I love CrossFit, I love lifting weights, and I got a pelvic floor injury, you know, and that's just not where you want to be. So and I think when you can share that with someone, they're like, okay, I don't want that to happen to me. I do not want that to happen,
learn from other people's mistakes rather than make the mistake themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
So in terms of talking about CrossFit and training in general, like, and I was going to say, like, what would be the do's and don'ts when you're pregnant? But even then, you kind of just touched on there, it's not black and white.
It's not black and white, but there are some things that we can look at. And as I said, like, let's focus on what we can do. Yeah. So we can keep training. Yeah. If we've been training to high intensities, we can keep going to high intensities in pregnancy, not postnatally. It's slightly different postnatally.
So just, let's speak just pregnancies at the moment.
Sure. Yeah, perfect. So we can push intensities if we have been, and that was a study that came out just quite recently. I think it was a 2020 study. No, actually, I think it was a 2023 study.
So what would high intensity look 90%. Like? Was that?
Yeah, the study basically was 2 groups. First group, high intensity training, 90% for 1 minute on, 1 minute off for 10 rounds.
Yeah.
Like you and I both know that's a tough session.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a
Going
non-pregnant
home,
person.
Going home,
Yeah.
Pregnant or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Versus 30 minutes of moderate continuous training at a 64 to 75%.
Okay.
This is generally what we would have recommended pre this
Being
study.
overly cautious and safe.
Yeah, like that kind of conversational pace, like 50 to 75%. You know, even for a highly trained person, this is what we would have recommended.
Yeah.
But the parameters from that study came back that in both sets, the everything looked good. Like the blood flow to the mother, blood flow to the fetus, like everything looked pretty similar, which is amazing for people who do CrossFit and want to continue doing their CrossFit style training if they are feeling up to it, if they're arriving to training well fed and hydrated, if post training they're feeling good afterwards, you know, and they can still like function throughout the day. So there's obviously certain different what's the word? Sorry, you're gonna have to edit that.
Protocols.
No, I cannot think of the word.
So, like, this is only a recent study. So, before that, there obviously hasn't been that much research done or coming out on pregnancy and training when pregnant, and that's why there's obviously people being overcautious in terms of their advice.
Yeah.
Is it a case where just more research is coming out now, so people can be more confident in terms of their coaching abilities to the client?
Yeah, I think definitely a lot more research is coming out at the moment on females in training in general, which is amazing. And it's, you know, interpreting that research and putting it through to training.
So what would still be the misconceptions for the majority of people who, you know, don't read research like yourself and put that into practice? Like, what would be the misconceptions people still make about training when pregnant?
A lot of them would be think that they can't train when they're pregnant.
Yeah.
They think that, you
That's
know,
the big
walking,
one,
swimming and yoga is what
Yeah.
they have to do. You know, resistance training, cardiovascular training is really, really good for the mother, but also really, really good for the unborn baby as well. And that's research that has come out too, that like you are literally, you know, altering your baby's epigenetics by training and eating well in pregnancy.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So it's a continuing on what the habits and behaviours you've been doing previously, just being able to continue them on. What if it was like someone who hasn't been training at all, really, essentially?
The advice I think would always be like, you know, do what you've always kind of done, but I would still always say if they wanted to come and train with somebody like me, that I could train, like get them to start doing some very like light and realistic resistance training and to support their body through the pregnancy, through their birth experience, through their postnatal experience and through motherhood, because that is a fucking marathon of an experience.
Because I presume that most clients would, or most soon-to-be mums would be like, oh, you know, I have someone grown inside me now, I want to make sure that I'm, like, even if they hadn't been training before and they hadn't had like exercise as a priority, that like they get pregnant and they're like, oh, I want to, you know, make sure that this baby is as healthy as possible, and they're probably like, okay, maybe I should start exercising, but then they're like, oh, that's probably too dangerous.
No, I'd say that you definitely can start doing something.
Yeah.
Definitely start doing something. Even if that's just getting more steps in, if that's doing like a, you know, pregnancy safe training program, if that's doing a pregnancy yoga class, you know, definitely start doing something.
Yeah. So that's the misconceptions about training when pregnant. What about post-pregnancy?
Post-pregnancy, I think, is a little bit more of a minefield than prenatal training, and I think that's often overlooked. I think a lot of the time we focus in, especially as exercise professionals, on pregnancy because it's just a much more visual thing maybe, and because there's obviously a baby growing inside, you know, it's like, it seems more risky, but actually I think the postnatal stuff is a little bit more high risk because you're dealing with someone who might have a birth injury, might have birth trauma, all of those other kind of mental health things going on, adjusting to their new life, adjusting to their new body. It's definitely a little bit more complex, I would say, and that is where I would start being a little bit more cautious as a trainer than in pregnancy.
Okay, and what would be the things that you would need to be cautious about, would you say?
The weights that we're lifting, the impact that we're exposing our body to, the exercise difficulty, so maybe just peeling all that back a little bit. So like, for example, if we were doing like kettlebell swings, let's just do like an RDL instead. So just making movements a little bit less dynamic, learning how to work with our breath, how to connect our core and our pelvic floor, like just so important and so overlooked. And even when I was told about it, even with a pelvic floor injury and by a physiotherapist, I kind of eye-rolled. I was like, oh, she's talking about breathing. Jesus, like, how have we ended up here? But the more I read into it, the more I was like, this is just so important, and not even just for like pregnant or postnatal women, but in particular, like all women who train. It's really important because we need to protect our pelvic floor for our life. Do you know, it's one of the most important muscles in our body. Like, we need it to function, especially if we're training for longevity. And if we want to keep training in our like senior years, like you need your pelvic floor to be in a really like good nick.
Yeah, and that's obviously what gets neglected the most, is the aftercare after
So neglected, especially in Ireland, really, really bad. In France, for example, they get, I think it's 6 postnatal physiotherapy checks.
Wow.
Paid for by the government, compulsory.
Yeah.
Like, you know, every single person there gets it. Do you know, we get nothing.
Nothing.
Even at our 6-week check, it's kind of like, check over the baby, how are you, bit of contraception advice, off you go. Honestly, I know, it's mad. I swear.
Okay, right, so that's on pre and postnatal. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your career as well, because obviously, all right, mum of 3, runs her own business, all right, partner, everything. Like, I presume takes up a lot of your time in terms of, do you have even any time for yourself? Like, what does the day-to-day look like for someone who runs their own business, has 3 kids to look after, you know, still wants to keep a relationship alive, all these kind of things?
Yeah, it's really tough, I'm not going to lie. It's an absolute juggle. And something that we're constantly just adapting and trying to like figure out as we go as well. Work is mental at the moment. It's really, really busy. The kids, it's just carnage. Yeah. Like absolute carnage. We're really lucky. We have really good childcare 3 days a week. We have a girl that comes to our house and minds the kids. So that's my opportunity to go and work and get my training in, which is an absolute priority for me. My own training is like,
keep you sane.
It keeps me sane. It honestly, I don't want to say it's the crux of my mental health,
but it's close there.
Might be. It's up there. Do you know? So I make that a priority, because if I don't train, I'm not a good mom.
Yeah, everyone else would suffer because of that.
Everyone would suffer. The ripple effect would be huge.
Yeah.
I only train 3 days a week. Like, it's not crazy. Like 3 hours of training a week, but it just keeps me ticking over nicely.
Oh, that was a question that I wanted to ask that just came up in my head there. Do you think that a lot of mums have that kind of guilt of training during like these busy periods as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever?
No, because I know.
Because you know.
I know now.
Yeah.
Like the ramifications actually are just not even worth it, and it's something that I work on with my clients all the time.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. It must be.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things that we work on, is like giving people permission to take time for themselves. Do you know? It is just like, they really are like, the mums and the females of the household, it seems to me, really are like the glue of the house. 100%. They keep everything going. Everything depends on them. Like, if my mental health failed, my business is gone. My children are going to majorly suffer. My relationship is going to suffer. My, like, everything, my life is going to be in bits. So me looking after myself and prioritising what I need to stay in a really good mental space is probably one of the number 1 priorities in my life, and that's what I try and teach my clients.
You have that awareness that you're, like, for you to go and do that training is the most selfless thing you can do, because you know then it impacts everyone else on a positive way. Yeah,
and the other thing as well that I find, especially with clients who are just starting to train with me, is that like, I do other things other than training as well. Like, I love reading and, you know, other things. It's not like, for mums, like having a shower or like going to Tesco's on your own is not a break. Yeah. They're like fundamental essentials for you to live. Yeah. Do you know, find something that you enjoy doing. It doesn't even have to be training. and do it often. You do not have to be like on your knees to ask for a rest or to take a break. Your battery doesn't have to be run out. Like start to learn when you're in orange, when the red flags are going, that you're like, I'm starting to.
So some people wait until they do burn out to realise that, though, do they?
I know, and it's teaching people, like, and that's why I love the check-ins and stuff with clients, to be like, just, you know, it's kind of like another set of eyes, I suppose, to look into like what's happening in your life, to be like, have you noticed this? And, you know, maybe just schedule something for.
Well, it's also nice for the client as well, because it's like, okay, if they're looking after everyone else, they're looking after everyone in the household, but now they've come to you and then they have someone to look after them, essentially.
Yeah, it is really like that. That's one of my favourite parts of my job, is minding mums and minding women. And like I said, like giving them permission to do things that they love. Like,
speaking on your career, I was obviously researching Top Mum in Business 2022. What do you think are some of the things that have contributed to that success, and just your success in terms of longevity of a business over the last couple of years?
I think being like really relentless and really consistent. Do you know, like every time you get knocked down, just find another way. Like, and there's been plenty of them, from like, you know, my business been closed due to a pandemic, find another way. Pregnancy, find another way. Twin pregnancy, find another way. I did 8 full weeks bed rest in that twin pregnancy. Like, I was literally not allowed out of bed. Find another way to keep the business going. The rehabilitation postnatally, like, find another way. Do you know, it is just like, there's always a way. You just have to keep finding it. And whenever another woman in business messaged me, just been like, Emma, this is really hard. Like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I'm like, you have to keep doing this. And this is the point that everyone else stops. This is the point where they're like, this is too much, this is affecting me too much, I have to stop. If you can just push on for another couple of weeks, another couple of months, you'll get through that. And then there'll be another thing. But I just think that you just have to keep pushing forward, and the obstacles and the challenges and the absolute shit shows are just an inevitable part of running a business, aren't they? It's just how it goes, but it's the relentlessness to be able to keep going.
You kind of win out of just longevity of just keep going regardless.
Absolutely, because everybody else stops when it gets too hard.
If you could give yourself one piece of advice when you were starting your career, what was it, 10 years ago? Was that correct?
In fitness, probably 8 years ago.
8 years ago, long time.
Yeah.
Like,
I think for the fitness industry,
it's a really long time.
Yeah.
So what advice, if you could go back to when you were starting, what would be the advice you would give to yourself? Because obviously there'll be personal trainers, and there will be people who want to start up their own business in the fitness industry listening to this. And a lot of them will literally just be starting. So for you, even if you could, you probably can't even think back to then 8 years ago.
I have 2 pieces of advice, and the first thing is delegate. The things that you are not good at, get someone else to do it. It'll cost you like a little bit, but what you will actually gain in the long run, and the time it will free up for you to do what you're good at, is worth its weight in gold.
How long did it take you to learn that lesson?
It took me about 3 brown envelopes from the revenue to be like, I need to get a bookkeeper. Sleepless nights, been like, oh my God.
They're coming for me.
They're coming for me. But because I'm not a bookkeeper, like I don't know how to do all of that stuff. So I have an amazing bookkeeper. She's just brilliant. So that would be delegate. And it's going, and just know that it is going to be hard. Like it's going to be really tough at times, but just knuckle down and just keep going. And the other thing is that remember that everyone has an agenda. Every single person who wants to work with you, who wants to do something with you, has an agenda, and that they're not all really nice and kind. And I know that sounds so pessimistic, but you know, I think especially as a female in the industry, I just feel we're just at a slight disadvantage in some ways, because there's a lot of really strong like alpha males kind of in it, and it is kind of being able to stand your ground and be like, I'll do it if X, Y, and Z, or you know, just always get a second opinion as well. And when you saying that, I completely agree, and I agree even more. You starting probably 8 years ago, where it would have been even more so as well. Oh God, so much. Like there was very few women in the Irish fitness industry, and if they they were bodybuilders, and it was just all of that kind of stuff going on, and that never really appealed to me or sat well with me. I remember back then.
Did you have, when you were starting out, did you have any kind of like, was there self-doubt there? Was there imposter syndrome, or was there any?
It still is, absolutely huge. I remember thinking, like, I really don't want to be a bodybuilder, but I think I'm going to have to be a bodybuilder if I want to succeed. I know that sounds mental, but it was all I saw on Instagram.
Especially 8 years ago.
It was literally all you saw.
Just body power and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was just, I just didn't know another way. And I remember being like, there must be another way to do this. And then it occurred to me soon, maybe after I had Jacob, or in and around that time, that it was like, Emma, like most of the population don't want to be bodybuilders. They just want to maybe like lose a little bit of body fat and like fit into their clothes a little bit better. So maybe go for those people.
I always, it's literally one of the running jokes, and like I've loads of bodybuilder friends, nicest people in the world, but it's always one of my like jokes on like any video I do is like, if you just stay away from the mean bodybuilders over there and come over here and I'll help you with this. Videos. Tell me about someone who's been influential in your life and also in your career.
I suppose in my life, from a business point of view, my dad is an entrepreneur, and my mum as well, to be fair. She like...
Tell me about them.
So my dad started off his career working in Sulis light bulb factory down in Bray. And he basically started his own business then as a tool maker in his mother's shed, and now has a huge business, and the business has evolved over the years, and it is that kind of relentlessness thing that we were talking about. You know, it's like when things stop working and you need to change it up and go again and find another way to do it. I've definitely learned that from him. But also my mum is a huge sounding board for me when I go to her with like, I'm thinking of doing this, what do you think, you know? And they're just, they work together now, my mum and dad. My mum works in the business as well, and I've learned so much from them, you know. And again, that kind of, find out why they want you to do that, and you know, like they're always trying to see the bigger picture, you know, and it's really good. I found it really good for me.
And also, you touched on there even being a woman in the fitness industry with her own business. You said that not everyone has, not everyone's agenda is going to be sound and kind and stuff like that, and obviously you getting advice off them, you know it's going to be genuine and it's for your own good. Yeah,
exactly. They're always looking out for the best of me, and I think they love like seeing what I'm building, and like they're always rooting for me, and I think they are just kind of like, yeah, go on Emma, like keep going, you know, which is, it's a real driver for me as well.
How long has their business been going?
About 38 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's evolved a couple of times in that time, but if anyone needs alloy wheel repair or tires, down a little Bray they are.
Lovely shout out. Okay, I'm gonna leave you with two more questions, Emma, right? So first one would be, what's one lesson being a mum has taught you that you would pass down to others?
Adjust your expectations of what you are able to give, what you are able to do. And also of your children. I think our expectations on our kids are so high, do you know, that we really just need to constantly keep stepping back and being like, why am I reacting to this in this way? Do you know, and that's something that I have to do an awful lot.
So what do you mean by that? So like in terms of having the patience to... Patience,
yeah. And so say I planned a lovely day out and off we went.
Yeah.
And Jacob gets there and he's like freaking out over, you know, and it is kind of like, okay, why is he freaking out? Okay, he's in a new environment. He doesn't really know what to expect. He whacked his foot on the car seat on his way out of the car. Do you know, all of these things, and they just like explode in these little people. But it's managing... It's me being able to step back and say, he's doing all of this because of this. I was going on this, been like, I've spent a bloody fortune on this day. I booked a day off work. You're here being an absolute nightmare. Your two sisters are crying in the back of the car. Like, but it is when you can do that and be like, you know, I know, Jacob, all of this has happened. This is what we're going to see when we go in. I think you're going to really enjoy it. We'll just take a few minutes here and then we'll head on inside. And it's nearly doing the same with ourselves as well. Like lots of deep breaths required.
Would you say they're your biggest coaching job?
Yeah, absolutely. But like my greatest teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think often we think we're our children's teachers, but I think they teach us so much more than we do them.
Last question I have for you then, off the back of that, which is good. So, what do you want your kids to say about you when they're older?
That even though I didn't get it perfect, that I always did my best for them, and that all of the sacrifices that we've made, like as a family, you know, it's, you know, we don't get a huge amount of time together and things like that, that it really was all for them and for their futures. And I always gave everything that I had, but just sometimes I didn't have that much to give to them, but I always did my best.
Emma, I appreciate your time today. Thank you.